Welcome to All Things Retreat Podcast. I'm Holly Porter, your host and CEO of Retreat R&R. With over 25 years of experience in designing transformative retreats, I'm here to share insights and inspiration to help you create extraordinary experiences. Whether you're a pro or just starting out, you'll find valuable ideas here. Enjoy the ride. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome everyone today to the show. I always have great guests. You know, I say that all the time, but I truly do. And today is no exception. We have Bernadette, and she is an intuitive and ancestral healing and grief coach. She's certified in grief and trauma, and she works with those who have had spiritually transformative experiences or those struggling with grief. She's had 20 years of experience and training working with both young and old, guiding them through some of life's most difficult transitions. And she's certified as an end-of-life doula through the University of Vermont. So welcome to the show, Bernadette. Happy to have you here.
Thanks, Holly. I am very, very happy to be here and just share a little bit more about myself.
Yeah, so this subject's a little bit different than anything we've had on the show prior, and I love it because when we talk about retreats and things, it's so broad as to what you can actually do at a retreat and bring people in for it. And there are a lot of people that do retreats for grief. I don't know if you knew that. I do
Yes.
hear that a lot. But let's back up and let's hear your story and how you got into ancestral healing and go from there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's been an amazing, life gives you amazing journeys. And if you had, my daughter asked me or told me when she was about 12 years old, she said, I don't want to live an ordinary life. And I'm like, that's all I wanted to do was live an ordinary life. You know, grow up, get married, have kids. I did do all that. But then my husband became sick with alcoholism. And so my life changed in about 2013 when he came to me and said that he was sick, and he died 4.5 years later, unfortunately. And I share that because when that happened, I thought my life was, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. It upended me. And I have been on an amazing journey since that happened. And during that time, I had some very spiritually transformative experiences. My sidekick has always been Ancestry and helping people build trees and looking back into family histories. And during David's illness, leaning back on that really helped me to, it kept me settled while there was a lot of chaos going on. You know, anybody that has addiction in their family, they understand this. So when he passed away, so my ancestors actually came to me and let me know they were there. It's a longer story, but just, you know, one came in what you would call a visitation. It's a dream that is where they are right there. And you know that you were really speaking with them. And it was my great aunt. And she told me that they heard my prayers. So, you know, I had been, and so there was, and I had a great grandmother that channeled through me, and I knew that, she was with me. So that's kind of the spiritual side. But all of this changed me from, who I was before David got sick, and certainly who I was before my ancestors came. I had worked with students and worked with elders, both those that had grief and trauma. And so when I was experiencing my thing, you know, when I was going through what I was going through with David, I understood the trauma that I was going through. And so when he passed away, I felt this need to reinvent myself. And the Ancestry, I was continuing to do that, and it was opening up more. And I realized as I was helping people tell their stories I was recognizing that they were learning about the trauma that their ancestors had gone through, and that it was helping them to understand who they were. And all of this I began to realize that this is my journey. As I went through this difficulty in my life, that I suddenly learned more about myself. And I understood how I was able to come through some of my trauma because I looked at my ancestors and they had experienced it. And so I saw their resilience and I recognized that in myself. And I decided, it kind of came to me that I needed to share this. So I started my own company. I began this journey of entrepreneurship, which was never in my plan. But I realized that helping, especially women who were older, like in my age group, that, my children were raised and I had experienced this grief, this deep grief. And for me, it was losing my husband. But for others, sometimes it's the loss of a marriage or something just traumatic happens in their life. And realizing that even at this age, I could become, there was more for me in my life, and that I could learn from the experiences that I had gone through, and that I could open to more. And so I created, my company is Tell Me Our Story, Ancestral Healing. And I work with people to look back at their family stories and to recognize the grief and the trauma that their ancestors had gone through, to recognize what had been passed down, the patterns of behavior, the understanding that what they went through affected who I am today. If I was to ask you right now, Holly, do you recognize any patterns of behavior that have been passed down in your family? You'd probably go, yeah. And so this is what all began to open up. And as I started working with people, and they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you have shared this with me because I never knew this. And now I understand why my family is the way they are and why I'm the way I am. And it helped open up forgiveness and compassion about not only for myself, but for others in my family and for my ancestors and what was, the stuff that was passed down to me, because I realized that we all have trauma. We all go through grief. And when we understand that what happens during that process, we just have a lot more forgiveness. So that's kind of how I got started.
I love it. Wow. Why do you think it's important?
I think when David died, there was, he left me in, he was a brilliant man. And he had a beautiful soul and we had a beautiful connection. But when he passed away, I was left really pretty empty, emotionally empty, financially, not doing well because when there's addiction, the family finances suffered. And so what became important is that looking back and understanding who I was as I came through that, that I understood my strength, and I understood that there was more for me in my life. And I think that there's so many of us who go through difficult times and that we don't realize if we give ourselves the grace and the compassion and the understanding of what we've been through and how we why we reacted maybe in ways that we weren't happy. There were things that I did that I wasn't proud of in this whole situation, that there was this awakening. So not only did I have a spiritual awakening and this deep connection with my ancestors, which continued and continues now, the spiritual connection, but this forgiveness. And I think that's what is so important for women, especially women. I think we're harder on ourselves. But I've worked
Yeah.
with some amazing men who also have had this feeling that, this, we're too hard on ourselves. And when when you're taught that you can look back and understand more, there's this opening that you just see yourself in a different light. And I
Yeah.
think you know that because you've shared a little bit about your story with me. So, that's where it comes from. That's why it's important.
Yeah. Do you love what you do?
I do love what I do. And I think it is whether I'm working with small groups or I'm working with one-on-one. Uh, I've never worked with anybody that hasn't learned something that they didn't know, or just discovered this part of themselves that they're just like, I get it. I get it. And that it gives them the ability to move forward and to, no matter who they are. So when I work with people, that they come to me, often people that have had some grief or who are just working through some challenges or who are just wanting to know more about themselves, and taking them through the process of looking back opens
Yeah.
them up spiritually. And a lot of people come to me because they have this deeper wanting to know more about the spiritual side of themselves. And so it becomes this combined process. As we get older, we start thinking, we start to lose our parents, we start to lose family members, and our thoughts are, well, what is this whole spiritual side? And
Yeah.
we often think we're the third rock from the sun. This is it. Most of us were taught that growing up, but I'm able
Right.
to open people to spiritual experiences and to acknowledge that we are part of something greater. And so that is also part of it, is that I help them to understand this bigger thing that we are a part of, that in our culture, we don't often talk about it. So it's
Right.
a greater understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings, and the idea that when we cross over, there's more than, than most of us even think about.
I could see this really helping somebody, maybe bringing a retreat leader, bringing you in as a speaker to help maybe with if they work on grief or whatever. I think this would be a great. Is that something you're open to?
Oh, it is something I actually do work in. I do small group work, and it's really doing exactly that. It is when you introduce the idea to somebody, just that. Let's just work on ourselves a little bit. Let's just think
Yeah.
about how we got to where we are today. Who am I? Where did I come from? And being able to, even when people don't know a lot about their ancestry, or being able to look back, the question I asked you earlier. So, can you see patterns of behavior that maybe have been passed down that you aren't really proud of? Maybe you have shades of it in yourself, or
Yeah.
maybe it is a part of you that's made it, and part of somebody that's made it difficult for you to work with them, whether it
Yeah.
is a family member or somebody you work with in business, that
Mhm.
you recognize, you see patterns of behavior. And
Mhm.
when I can open people up to this idea that trauma, all of us experience trauma and grief in our lives. None of us escapes it. And
Right.
that shapes us, and it shapes the people that we work with. So
Yeah.
when we are able to know that we can experience or learn more about ourselves just by looking back at the stories of our ancestors, it
Mhm.
opens us to being able to meet people where they're at, to meet
Yes.
people, to this understanding of, when you come across somebody that maybe is challenging to work with, or you feel is maybe preventing you from moving forward, or that you recognize, okay, let me understand this person in a different way. First, let me understand me in a different way. Let me know that my experiences, often shape the way I react to other people, and then to
Yeah.
be able to do that with others who are around us, who are in our family, those we work
Right.
with. It just, remembering that everybody has a story and that we all
Yeah.
come from this, just gives us this gift of being able to hold space in a different way, so that we recognize that we need to understand that people are reacting maybe because of things in their life. So
I
that's
was
one way.
watching my 12-year-old grandson and the other day playing baseball, and it was interesting. He wasn't raised by his biological dad, and it was just interesting watching just his actions and demeanors and patterns that he had in his genetics and not even knowing. And I said to my daughter, I says, I cannot believe how much he reminds me of his dad, like his
Yeah,
biological dad. And she goes, I know, I have to keep, because he's not a good person. And she says, I
yeah,
have to just keep remembering, what I did love about him, and just really focus on those actions that he does. Cause there are some, you always think of things your kids do that bug you,
yeah,
or they're like, oh, you're just like your mother. I mean, but
yeah,
it's true. I mean, they're in our DNA. And what I do love about some energy work is how you can clear some of those patterns, especially ones that aren't so great or that you're not so fond of. There
yeah.
are things you can change that change everything going forward. So I
Well,
love that piece.
Well, the other thing is just knowing the story is what brings the ancestral healing. I mean, science does tell us that genetically that things are passed down, the traumas can be passed down.
Yes.
Understanding your story is what brings the healing. Ancestral healing is thought about energetically as well. But when I'm able to help people know and understand their story, and the other thing is our ancestors are with us. They are our first, often when people do feel that connection to the other side. And I'm sure there are people who don't always want to admit it, but they do feel they're connected with loved ones, and they get signs,
Right.
and so our ancestors and our loved ones who have crossed are usually the first spiritual connections that we have. And when we
Hmm.
awaken or open to just knowing those, this whole understanding of the world we live in begins to make more sense. And yes,
Yeah.
that example that you shared about your grandson is a perfect example, and how wonderful um, your daughter-in-law or your daughter who
My
says,
daughter.
yeah, I remember what I'm trying to remember the good things that he had in him.
Yeah.
Because we're all black and white. We all have shades that's why we're here. That's part
Yeah.
of our journeys. Yeah.
What do you think? Um, let's talk about the death doula and
Yeah.
what that entails.
So, that's so interesting. So, when I worked in elder care management, one of the things that I did it was helping family in this whole idea of transitioning. And
Mhm.
so it is helping people to understand that we do cross over and there is more on the other side. And it is one of the reasons that I decided this was offered through the University of Vermont through the medical college. And one of the reasons that I chose to do this was this understanding that the more knowledge you have, that we're in this cyclical, that we come in, that birth is so beautiful, and that we have to recognize that when we come to the end of our lives, and especially if we've lived a long life, that it is this beautiful, like, this is a life that's ready to go home and
Yeah.
to cross over. And it is one of those things that, when again, we don't talk about it in this society. And that's why when I experienced all the things I went through as David's illness came, and the grief and trauma that I went through, I realized that the healing that came through as I learned to heal, that there was more to this whole cyclical process of life and death, and that opening to our ancestors, opening to our connections on the other side, is what helps us just understand more. And I want people, as they're listening to me now, to know that, be open to those signs, and, open that window a little bit. Let the idea that your grandmother, your great grandmother, somebody a dear friend that you've lost, are there trying to connect with you. And that's where all of this, all of these things that I was trained in grief and trauma. I worked with middle school students who had experienced it. And all of this came together through the loss of David, and me needing to reawaken and redefine myself is how this all happened.
What would you share with somebody that maybe is afraid of dying or of death?
Oh, I think that learning more about what that process is like and what happens, and learning more about how we can communicate with the other side, will help you to understand that there is more. I'll tell you a very quick story, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I lost a dear friend. She was young. We were preschool moms together. She had 2 young children. One was the same age as my daughter. She passed away very unexpectedly and went to sleep one night and just didn't wake up the next day. And I was, a longer story, but I was just crushed. I couldn't understand how these 2 little children were left without a mom. And she came to me a couple of weeks later, and I hadn't had one of these experiences, but I suddenly found a picture of her that I didn't know I had. And when I found that picture, I felt her spirit come into me. And that was the moment that I realized there's another side. She's with me. And she came to me and made me feel, I'm okay. You're okay. We're all okay. Like that I could understand this. And literally it changed my life, because it made me realize there was another side. And I think that's what I would share, is that, I work with people to help them understand this, to help them know that we can understand what it means to pass, and that not only can we understand it, we can learn to embrace it. So that's what I would say. We do carry this fear, and once you understand there's more, that fear really leaves us. So there's so much to share. So much to share.
Yeah, I love that. Well, can you think of one final message to leave our listeners?
I think the best message is to, there's 2 things. One, the company is called Tell Me Our Story, from the point of view of the child asking the parent. And it's that because your story is so important. And so many people want to say it's in the past. It is, learn your story. And the other is to know that this idea of ancestral healing, of being able to heal, brings so much peace to you when you just understand more about who you are and and your relationships change. And it is that, meeting them where they're at. I can make it through with anybody as long as I can understand. You can put a boundary there and say, I don't need to accept all of their behaviors. But that, that healing there's healing for everybody. And it's important to know that it's there. And as you look inside, you can, and do this little bit of work, that life changes for you. I think that's probably the most
important. That's a great message. Thank you. I love meet them where they're at. Mine's love them where they're at. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do both of those.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
And it changes your life, right? Doesn't it? When that comes to you, it changes your life. And so that's what, you talk about retreats, that And that's my goal, is create my own retreat, and to bring this all together. And I have, plans to work with others, like grief retreats, but this idea of coming to know yourself better in a different way. So that's where the retreat part comes in.
Well, I'm going to challenge you to do that. I think that would be a great healing experience for the attendees that come to your retreat. And I just appreciate you taking your time to share with our listeners about this important subject that isn't always talked about and isn't always a fun thing really to talk about. So I appreciate you being a guest today. And everyone, you can get Bernadette's information in the show notes and reach out to her. We'll have all our information put there so that you can reach out and see how we work with her.
I'd love to connect with anybody, even just to chat. So thanks. Thank you so much, Holly, for inviting me.
You're welcome. Okay, everyone. Till next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of All Things Retreat. We hope you're leaving with new ideas, fresh inspiration, and the motivation to take your retreats to the next level. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps us grow and reach more retreat leaders like you. And if you have any questions, topics you'd like us to cover, or just want to say hello, send us an email at info@weretreatrnr.com. Follow us on social media to stay connected and catch all the latest updates. Until next time, remember, great retreats start with great intentions. Let's make them extraordinary, one step at a time.